Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose.
So with that, welcome back to Pain with a Purpose, Season 2, episode, I think we're at 14 now, with Rob Rowan, right? What a great name. Just like rings right off the tongue.
I appreciate that.
We got to go down the stat sheet first, right? So, I don't know the accolades, but played football in high school, right?
Yeah,
all throughout your entire life.
All throughout
really.
my entire life. Yeah, started when I was like 5.
Ryan?
Yeah, I played at Calvary AA growing up as a kid, and then I went to Archbishop Bryan. I was a decent player, but suffered a couple concussions my senior year, and that was it for me.
And that's why we're here, CTE.
Yep, CTE. Yep.
I mean, we could do a whole thing on that, right? Do you think
no
like
doubt.
a few years from now they're going to either revamp the helmets, or do you think that everybody's going to be wearing the practice squad helmet, like almost like the Scullies or whatever they are?
Yeah, they're called Guardian caps. So you're already seeing it now. Like you're already seeing in the pros, a lot of guys are opting to wear it. So yeah, I do believe that within the next like 3 to 5 years that it will just be another piece of the football equipment. Like I think it's going to be a mandatory thing. And in reality, it should be. It should be.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I played football 2 years, but I remember getting like my bell rung a few times, even at practice.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, this is not for me.
I mean,
we're banging every single day.
That's where most of the concussions happen.
Yeah.
Is in practice, because a lot of guys, maybe they're not as guarded, and, just maybe it's a quote unquote off day for them, but it's not an off day for somebody else. And,
mean, I come from, for all things considered, right? I kind of come from like a football family, right? My brother Sean was the running back at Roman. And when I finally like talked to my mom, we have different moms, but like when I talked to my mom and finally let me play, they saw my last name. They know who I was.
Sure.
They threw me in the backfield and they were like, all right, we're gonna give him the ball.
Yeah.
Worst thing I ever did. Kid next year, we was 8th grade football. Next year he was playing varsity at prep. I'm like, dude, you wronged me, dude. But anyway, obviously, played college ball too, or?
I didn't, man.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, a couple concussions my senior year, and, just recognized that it was time for me to stop.
Yeah.
So,
well, more power to you, because a lot of these, I was just with somebody at the gym the other day and he was like, I played with a torn labrum my entire senior season at prep. And then he did it again when he was at this point he was at your sinus, but I think he originally went to, Monmouth?
Yep. Out in Jersey.
And I was like, dude, like, I think it got to the point where his coach was like, do you ever want to like hold your child above your head?
Yeah.
He was like, cause you're not good enough to play. You're not getting drafted, dude.
Yeah, man. It's,
but when we're in it, dude, like we'll do
the love of the game. Yeah. It's tough to give up.
So, obviously I have you out here for a reason, right? And like, it's an interesting one because you are the first episode that I'm having or first person that I'm having on the podcast that doesn't directly, right? Like, suffer from like substance abuse or alcoholism or anything like that. Although if I understand correctly, and I know a little bit about you, right? Like your life is kind of riddled with it in one form or another.
Yes.
I think like the majority of us kind of are at this point. Like it's all, we all know at least one or two people, right? But your family,
for sure,
has some history of it. So, and we'll get into all of that. But also your purpose, right, is a really cool purpose as well. Cause I definitely want to dive into like really how how I've turned my pain into a purpose, right? You've probably turned your pain and like your life experience into a different type of purpose that directly ties into, for all things considered, maybe somebody not making the same choices that I did, right? And kind of playing, whether they know it or not, like a father figure.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll dive much more into all of that. So you went to Ryan, so I assume you're from
Northeast
Philly.
Grew up Northeast Philly.
How bad Northeast Philly? Like we talking Liberty Bell, Morel Park?
So in between, man, I was a Chalfont guy.
Okay.
So
all right.
Yeah.
So it could have been worse.
Yeah, I would say so.
I would definitely say so.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what did childhood look like, right? Like how did a lot of times, like, I'm sure your experience is very much like mine, right? Especially being like an archdiocese kid, right? We all went to, we all went to like the neighborhood keg parties. We all went to like all that other stuff, right? But like, how did you keep the mindset of like, and maybe it was subconscious, maybe it wasn't, right? But like, how did you stay on the straight and narrow when I'm sure that you saw a lot of people going left, going right, not making the right choices, maybe seeing your family members kind of like doing, stuff that you were like, I'll never be that, right?
Sure.
Walk me through all of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, childhood was relatively normal for, I think, what we all would consider normal, and, involved with a lot of sports, but certainly was exposed to a lot of the wrong things, specifically at an early age, with people making obviously poor decisions and, whether it was alcohol, whether it was drugs, but growing up in the Northeast, that was normal. That was kind of like a rite of passage. Like, as you stepped out of a grade school and you got into high school, it was like, partying became the norm. That was kind of a normal thing. And, so I was always around it. For me, I consider myself incredibly blessed that I was exposed to what I was exposed to, but yet never felt captivated for that to be my answer, when struggles came up in my life. And, one of the saving graces for me was, I was about like probably 7 years old. And, I'll never forget, I came home from school one day and I walk in the door and my mom was on her hands and knees hysterically crying. And, as a 7-year-old kid, I was just kind of like taken back and my uncle, which was her brother, she had just found out, overdosed on cocaine. And, that image of my mom in that moment left such a mark on me. And, unbeknownst to me at the time as I was growing up and I was becoming exposed to more things and more opportunities, that's something that always stuck with me in regards to like, I was never going to put my mom through that situation again. And, I'll never forget, man, I was in college and, I hung out with a lot of people that experimented with and partook in cocaine on a relatively consistent basis. And, like they knew not to do it around me. They knew to never ask me.
Yeah.
And, to me, I feel blessed that was, that's the way things played out in regards to, what was obviously a really traumatic situation for my mom. And, it left such a mark on me that I never wanted to put her back in that position.
It's a really interesting point, right? Because I understand like the whole point of like not wanting to put mom like back in that spot, right? Because it's a traumatic experience, right? Like it's literally a replayed image, right? Probably up until this day, you could probably still put yourself in that exact moment. But touch on like, and I don't know how to put this in the right word or right phrase, right? But like you probably weren't a nerd, right? You were an athlete growing up, right? You probably had a lot of kids or a lot of friends, right? But what I find interesting is like the college kids, right? Essentially knowing not to bring it up around you, right? Like not saying like, hey, Rob, come on, dude, look one time, like, so how did you set that boundary early on? Because I think a lot of times, right? Like we're getting older, right? So like, even though, my daughters have never seen me drink or drug, right?
Sure.
God, thank God, but there's going to be times, right? I mean, and you are a high school teacher, right? So like and it's everywhere. So it's like, I want to know, and I'm trying to always pick people's brains on how did you set that boundary? Like, it was really just like something early on where you're like, I don't want anything to do with that junk. You guys can do whatever you want. I'm not judging you, but like, just do me a favor. Don't bring it up. Or was it really just a thing of like, they kind of knew the type of person that you were from your like morals and values and your character, that they were like, we're just not even going to like waste our time with trying even to ask Rob?
Yeah, I think it was probably a mix of all that. I think look, I wasn't a saint, and I made some decisions, and throughout high school that you certainly look back and you would like to take back, but I think for me, like, it's so hard to tell my story without speaking about the role that God has played in my life. And even when I felt like I was out of relationship with God, I felt like he was in relationship with me. And I always felt this pull, like this spirit that really gave me the strength to set those boundaries without worrying about like, what are going to be the ramifications of, if I say like, nah, I don't want to partake in that. Like, I think it's a really tough thing for a teenager who is, growing up and dealing with all the peer pressures that come along with that. And for me, like, like I said, I was out of relationship with God, but I felt like he was in relationship with me and still working through me in terms of having the strength to say, like, those are things that I absolutely recognize are going to wreck my life. And therefore I'm not even going to experiment, So,
I mean, it's just a really good point. And I just wanted to like touch on, because again, like, I don't even know how to have the conversation. I can have the conversation as best as I know right now, where it's like, hey, let me tell you a little bit about like how I ruined my life, to at least to my kids, right? Where I can go about it a different way, in the sense of, a much deeper conversation of like why I went down that road, or why I continued to do what I did, or whatever the case may be. So I definitely find that interesting. All right. So you graduated college, I assume. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Where did you go to college?
So I went to Penn State, and I'm like,
dude,
I'm like the most.
So really, you got to give yourself more credit then. If you weren't really drinking, you might have been drinking, but like,
I was
like
drinking.
That,
I was drinking. There's no doubt.
Party
like
school.
Drinking was my choice of, indulging. And there was definitely times where I had absolutely more than I ever should have. But yeah, so I went to Penn State. Now, look, it's interesting. Like, people don't know that about me because I don't tell people that. And part of the reason I don't tell people that is because I look back at those 4 years, and I look back and I feel like I wasted a tremendous amount of time in those 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people, like, they drink the blue and white Kool-Aid, and they're in the cult, and it's they're Penn State. And I don't really take a lot of pride in the fact that, really, because I'm not really prideful of my time there, because who I am now today is so different than who I was in that moment.
Sure. Yeah.
And, I ended up going back to grad school a couple of years after I graduated college, and it was like a redemption tour for me. And that's the way I approached it. And, so it was, just kind of a healing experience for me.
I literally have a good buddy of mine that, when I ended up like finally like embarking on recovery, right? And staying sober, this guy's been with me ever since. And we, for some reason, can't escape each other.
Yeah.
I moved back to Montgomery County. He lives in King of Prussia, right? Next thing you know, like, I get a dog. He's my dog sitter. He opened up a dog sitter, whatever. But he went to Penn State.
Yeah.
And his degree, he's like, dude, I think I got a degree in, let's just say telecommunications, something like that. He's like, dude, I don't use my degree.
No.
I think he got, he has a very much a similar experience where he was like, yeah, in the time, right? Hindsight's 2020, but in the time, it was a blur. I partied my ass off. But essentially, I say all that because, like, have you noticed like a shift in the culture a little bit, right? And when I say that, I mean, like, I almost feel like the culture now, even with the college kids, is very much more like into fitness, into like their well-being. Like, I'm sure there's still partying going on, don't get me wrong. But I feel like, and maybe it's just because I just didn't see it before.
Yeah.
But I feel like much more people are like actually taking like almost like a more tolerant look at like, I kind of want to be clear headed. I want to make sure that like I have like control of everything around me, you know, and maybe that's just my own distorted perception.
No, I agree 1,000%. I mean, this is something Amanda and I talk about a lot. Like there seems to be like an awakening that's happening with people. You know, just kind of awakening to like truth and, you know, just the reality that like these things that we're putting in our body are so harmful. And so, yeah, man, I see it. I do. I even see it at the high school level, like guys that are, you know, really, really wanting to take care of themselves and really wanting to, you know, make sure the things that they're putting in their body are actually healthy and, you know, are going to improve their well-being. So, yeah, I agree 1,000%.
Easier said than done, because even half the food that we're putting in our body, I mean, we could have a whole nother podcast on that. Right?
Yeah,
With like
for
the
sure.
poison that they're, you know, essentially selling to us that says that it's healthy. But yeah, that's what I've noticed that, right? Where like, you know, I'm like, it's a Friday night and the gym's packed with kids really half my age. And I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Like, I was not doing any of this.
Nah, man. I didn't start that till after college.
And even the kids that didn't go down the path that I went down, right?
Yeah.
Like they weren't doing any, like nobody was at the gym on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I agree.
But all right, so you went back to grad school,
Yep.
right? You had the redemption tour.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you very slowly but surely started to chip away at the Rob that sits in front of me today.
Yeah. So like I'll backtrack a little bit. So when I was in high school, I went through what was really the most life altering experience up to this point in my life. And because it's impossible for me to sit here today and talk about who I am without talking about what transpired at that time and how that affected the course of my life. And in some cases, the role that alcohol played, even in the early years of dealing with what I was dealing with. But, you know, I was, I don't know, about like 16, 17 years old, and I suffered a severe panic attack on the way home from school one day. And at the time, I didn't know what that was. I didn't even know what I was experiencing. But there was these overwhelming intrusive thoughts that I was dealing with about wanting to take my own life. And, you know, the fear that instilled in me that day, like shook me to my core. And, I had no idea what it was. I had no idea where it came from. I had no idea where the thoughts were coming from. And so it felt like in a lot of ways, like that I was, I'm going to use the term like under attack because, you know, from an emotional, mental standpoint, I didn't know where this came from, and I didn't really know how to deal with it and handle it. So, you know, outside of my mom, who I happened to call that day and tell her everything that was going on, you know, I really kept like a close lid on it, and I didn't tell people what I was experiencing, what I was going through, and so forth and so on. But you know, that day really started my journey with OCD. Now, I mean, I went through the rest of high school. I went all the way through college. And I was dealing with OCD symptoms in the form of intrusive thoughts with, you know, self-harm, which is the main one. But there's several different subtypes of OCD that kind of creep up and kind of go in and out. And, you know, so all this was happening underneath the surface as I was kind of like, you know, just navigating my way through life. And, you know, I had said to you in the beginning, like, I feel blessed for the reason that I did not resort to substances to figure things out. And there were times where I wanted to, because I wanted to try to numb these thoughts, and I wanted to try to just numb the reality of what I was going through. Because there was times where I thought I was like legit going crazy. Like I was losing my mind, like with this internal battle that I was going through. And, you know, so that happened behind the scenes for like 6 to 7 years, all throughout college. And, you know, there was kind of like, I'll use the term like a ceasefire And, that was from like age probably about like 23 to like 26, which uniquely enough is when I really started to get like really healthy. And I ended up losing like, I started CrossFit before CrossFit was like the thing, so I started going to a gym in Northeast Philly called No Limit Gym. And, I think the first time I went in there, I was probably like the 12th or 13th person who signed up at his gym.
Yeah.
And like it was on like a second floor of an apartment building. And so it was like, original stuff. And, but I kind of went on a journey and I lost like 100 pounds in like less than a year. And I got super fit. And during that period, a lot of the symptoms that I was dealing with from an OCD standpoint kind of really disappeared or dissipated. And, it wasn't until, I did a stint coaching in college when I went back to grad school. And then I took another job after that at Kutztown. And, my living situation up there was it just wasn't good. And, I was making dirt money and, I was living with, who at the time was an equipment manager, and it just was a bad situation.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to me at the time, that was causing all types of levels of stress that, I wasn't really aware of the effect that had on me and some of the OCD that I was dealing with. And so I had another really bad panic attack. And that introduced like round 2 of my OCD battle.
Now with life problems, though, like adult problems.
Exactly.
Which could even be worse.
Yep. So at this stage, I was like 26, 27 years old. And I still really hadn't told anybody what I was going through, maybe outside of my mom. This time around, it got worse. And the intrusive thoughts got worse. And they became more persistent. And they became more aggressive. And I finally got to a breaking point. And it's actually a really neat story. I'm like anti-social media. And
you don't say.
Yeah. So, but I happened to be on, I think it was Twitter. I can't remember. And I was scrolling one morning and I come across this tweet from this author that I followed. His name is Brad Stuhlberg. And the title of the article was Mental Health Expert Struggles with Mental Health.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yeah, I got to click on that. So I click on it and he starts talking about his experience with OCD. And he goes into great detail. And that scares the hell out of some people when they really start talking about some of the intrusive thoughts they deal with. And so he goes into great detail about how he was taking this trip. And for 4 hours of the trip, he was having these intrusive thoughts about driving his car off the side of the road. And he had no idea where it was coming from. So he was in a full-fledged panic. And so as I'm reading this, it was the first time in my life where I was able to, I felt like I wasn't alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 1 million pounds came off my back because I was like, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
So
not to cut you off, but so up until this point, did you even identify that it was OCD?
No.
So you just thought you were literally going out of your mind.
Yeah.
But you were like, what am I going to do?
I knew I wasn't.
Yeah.
I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. And I was so scared to tell somebody what was wrong or what I was experiencing.
Or even talk about what you were these thoughts, right?
Well, yeah, one of the subtypes of OCD is self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's not a moment in my life where I've ever wanted to harm myself. But yet these intrusive thoughts come in, and what happens is they plant seeds of doubt because you start questioning, where did that thought come from? Why did I have that thought? And so the way OCD works is that, once you have this intrusive thought that enters in and it frightens the hell out of you, what you do is you try to create certainty in your life to make sure that thing never happens. So the certainty creates the compulsion. So the obsessiveness is the thought, and you start obsessing over the thought. And then the compulsion piece is the certainty to try to prevent that thought from becoming reality. So people who suffer from OCD, they obsess over something that they fear because of some traumatic experience that they went through. And then the compulsion piece is the thing that keeps them stuck.
Yeah.
So,
you just did a really good job of breaking that down, because like I only know what I know.
Yeah.
I know substance abuse. I know like a little bit of mental health, like my mental health stuff, but I never had to actually look into the OCD stuff.
Yep.
And we just like briefly talked about it, right? But how often do like people joke around about like, it's just my OCD, right? But like hearing it like that, it's like it's not a joke. For the God, God forbid someone, is suffering from it, right? And really like everybody in your life had no clue that you were actually suffering from this, right?
No, so like really,
it's like you have no clue.
I was like imposter syndrome times a million, man. Like I got so good at covering up, some of the inner battles that I was dealing with, which is, that is the most unhealthy thing you can do. And so going back to that article, like that article inspired me to actually go get help. And because for the first time, I was able to put a label on something that I was experiencing. And so this is unique though, because like this is how much of an asshole I am and we can be. I go to my first therapy appointment with this woman, and she tells me that I have OCD, and I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. And so I walk out, and things just get worse, and they keep getting worse, and and then finally, at the time, I mustered up the courage to tell my ex-wife that this is what I'm dealing with. And, to her credit, she was extremely supportive and really pushed me to actually like get legitimate help. And at that point I kind of like, I surrendered and I committed to like, okay, I'm going to seek legitimate therapy and counseling for this. And it's some of the hardest work that I've ever done, in my life. I got some crazy stories, man, that like, so the main therapy is called ERP, exposure response prevention. And so essentially when somebody who suffers from OCD, when you step into ERP treatment, you make a hierarchy list. And the hierarchy list is like, okay, what scares the hell out of you the most? And then we're just going to trickle down this list. And so, my therapist, who is like my guy, I love him to death. We create this list, and we've done some crazy things, man. Like he put me on like a 5-story building, sitting off the edge, no guardrail. Like, he's like, hey, if you want to jump, go, man. Like, so we've done some crazy things, and it's an incredible journey. When I look back and I look at how much I suffered in silence for so long, and part of the reason that I wanted to, be able to come on your show and talk about this is because I know that there's so many people out there that are suffering in silence, maybe with OCD and obviously with a lot of other things as well. And, to know that there's real, authentic healing help that is out there and it's right in front of you. It's just, finding the courage to be able to take that step,
So 2 really big takeaways from me, right? Is one, like, so I don't know, and I don't have OCD.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if I got to a point where I was broken enough and like my therapist was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to So like my takeaway there, right, is like you didn't just get better by osmosis, right? You didn't just get better because like you identified this thing. Like there was absolutely, and probably still to this day, action that you take, right, to like keep this at bay, but like also get better and stay in. Is it considered remission, or is there an actual term?
Yes, it's a great question, man. So like, I was actually thinking about this, kind of more recently. Like my perspective has shifted with my OCD experience. And a lot of that has to do with my faith and where I'm at in my life right now and where I find my identity at. And, OCD has humbled me. It has stripped away my pride. It has allowed me to take a deeper dive into my spirituality, knowing that like I can't just rely on myself. Like I'm not strong enough to muster up the courage that I need to be able to face the battles that I have to face on a continuous basis. So like I've shifted my perspective from that regard because I look at it as a blessing now. And like I still deal with it, and I still deal with it in different capacities and in different ways. Now, what I have done is I've become significantly more educated on it. And, my experience in learning how to cope with it has grown tremendously. So when certain situations arise, I'm able to handle it significantly better, and I have a better understanding of where it's coming from. But there's also an element that I recognize that like it continues to humble me. And, so I don't look at it. I used to hate it, man. I used to hate that I dealt with it. And I used to hate the fact that like, why me? Everybody, why me? And, I look at it now and I understand like, no, I know exactly why me. Because without this experience, I wouldn't be in touch with who I am. I wouldn't be in the relationship I am with God. And I wouldn't be the man I am today if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through. So.
Yeah, that term where people, and I don't know where this term came from, but I perceive it fairly differently. Where like God won't give us, battles or, won't give us anything too tough that we can't handle.
No doubt.
I don't know if that's true, right? Because like, listen, I see it from a sense of like, God will always give me too much that I can't handle. Right?
Sure.
Because if I can handle it, I don't need God.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then I'm back to square one. And then when I'm back to square one, I'm just sitting in, for conversation's sake, a full-on panic attack, right? Or whatever the case may be. The other takeaway that like I found really interesting, right, is like everything that you're talking about, right? Everything that you've gone through in silence, everything, the list goes on and on. We haven't even talked about who you are in your community, right?
Sure.
And like, that's like I think is the most honorable thing, right? Because like, not to toot your own horn here, right? But like you come from an area where it's not Friday Night Lights, but it's Friday Night Lights, right? It's not,
it's incredible. Yeah.
With where are they at in Texas? Midland.
Midland or Midland, Odessa or
whatever it is, right? So it's not that, but it is in the sense that any given time you walk into a Starbucks, they probably know who you are, right? Or like you see people in your passing and they're like, oh, it's Coach Rob, right? So like being not only the varsity football coach of a prominent school in that area, right, in Doylestown, but also being a leader and being a teacher at that school, right? But like being open about talking about this stuff, right, where it's like we don't have to suffer in silence.
No.
Although nobody ever said that we had to keep this stuff like close to our heart and not tell anybody, but it's just like how I don't know why we're wired that way, where it's like, God forbid anybody ever finds out. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, that's the one thing that's going to the grave with me, God forbid. But that's the truth, right? Is that everybody has their own battles. Everybody's going through something.
Everybody.
So that's like the really cool part, right? Is that you not only have like a huge part in like, shaping young minds and like playing a very integral part in not only sportsmanship, but like, hard-nosed, hard work, right? Like you're going to, if you want to be good, if you want to be, talent's only going to take you so far, right? And now we're going to have to work for the other 90% of it.
Yeah.
But like, it didn't just happen again by Rob waking up one day and being like, I'm going to be Coach Rob. Right?
Yeah,
like, there was like a ton of work that like leads up to all this stuff.
No doubt. No doubt.
And the reason why I laughed and you were like, I'm like anti social media.
Yeah,
and I was like, you don't say. So the backstory there, right, is Rob threw me a major bone. I started like a content thing.
Yep.
I shouldn't say I did. Charles, who helped me out with the podcast early on, right, and now has become my business partner. We started this content thing.
Yep.
And for all things considered, like we didn't have anything. Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to get into like high school sports. We need to do this. We need to do that.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were able to like put us sideline for the entire season is like, I'm forever grateful for that, so.
Well, look, you guys do incredible work, man. I was out to dinner last night with a former player. He graduated in 2019 and I was showing him a couple of the videos and he was just like, dude, I'm ready to suit up right now. I was telling Amanda that last night. She was cracking up.
Well, a lot of times I was getting the videos. So Charles would send them, I believe, to either whoever social media person was or Amanda first. And I was getting them from Amanda. And I was like, And I was acting like I had seen them before. I was like, I was like, I told you. But it was the first time I was seeing it. I was like, this is so sick.
Yeah. He did just an incredible job, man. Yeah. Incredible job.
He's a really good kid.
Yeah.
So to touch more on, we touched on the pain, right? A lot. And how we got through the pain. And obviously, if anybody's out there struggling with not only OCD, but like substance abuse or anything, the whole message is like, okay, you can identify it, right? Yep. But like, are you going to sit in the shit? Or are you going to like, once you identify it, just become ignorant to the fact that like, you're not going to just get better by like acknowledging that you may or may not be suffering with something? Or are you going to like seek help or seek action and try to get through this and kind of like, sit on the side of a 5-story building, right, and walk through that fear, and like, you have no idea what's on the other side of that fear.
Yeah. So it's cool you said. I just want to touch on something real fast. So like, my therapy journey was interesting. Like, it wasn't like, cool. I found the first person I locked in, and
that's not linear either.
Yeah. So like, my therapy journey was interesting, and at one point I was going to a Christian counselor, and I can't remember his name. He was a great dude. And got hooked up through a church that I was going to when I was living in Jersey. And I remember I went down to a session and he drew this circle, and this was life-changing for me. And he said, and he wrote real big in the middle of it, he wrote fear. And he said, you're on this side at the bottom and God's on this side at the top. And you keep trying to walk around the circle. And he said, and God just wants you to walk right through the circle, but he wants to lead you through it. Mm-hmm. Life-changing. And, I remember that day, I said to him, thank you. You've taken me as far as I can go. Mm-hmm. And now I need the next step.
Yeah.
And that's when I got an ERP and really started to like really put myself into those situations and allow that fear to be fully present. And learn how to cope with it. So,
I mean, I still have a ton of questions. Like, we could literally have a whole nother episode on this because, like,
we'll dive into the purpose though.
Yeah,
because it is all full circle.
I mean, I'm sure it is, but I'm going to ask anyway because I don't care. I don't care if anybody's got a timeline. You're on my show.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that so now, like, sorry. So walk me through, like, you're in a session, right? Yep. And you're leading up to the session, because I'm sure you had that rapport with your therapist at this point that what the next one's coming,
no doubt.
Like what's coming up and what the agenda is. What does it feel like if it was a good session, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does the next 24 to 72 hours look like, right? Is it more in the sense of like, I just uncovered some really deep shit, right?
Yeah.
Or is it like the sense of relief, or is it both? Is it all different every single time? And how do you keep that motivation kind of going, right? Because much like a lot of mental health, a big part of even medication side, right, is like the medication starts working. Yeah. People are like, I'm not going to take it anymore. It works so well. We just don't take it. Same thing with like sobriety, right?
Sure,
where it's like people that go to AA, they're like, AA works so well.
Yep.
They're like, people are like, I don't know anymore.
Good. Yeah,
and then like they end up needing it again.
Yep.
So walk me through that.
Yeah, I think so. Like, the anxiety going into a session off the charts. Mm-hmm. because you know you're about to step into a therapy session where, you know, some of the things that, you know, for whatever reason provoke tremendous amounts of fear are going to, you know, you're going to have to reenact. And so like the anxiety component prior to stepping into the session is off the charts.
Yeah.
And especially early on when I was really new. But I trusted my therapist so much. And I trusted the path that I was on because I felt like I was there for a reason. And so even through the anxiety, it was like, you're good. Like, you're good. This is all, like, everything that you're experiencing, it's all BS and it's lies anyway, even though it feels so real, right? We're like, for me, like as a competitor, it was like, I'm in this battle and I'm not losing the battle. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care how bad it hurts. I don't care what I got to go through. Like, and I remember I told my therapist early on, I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Like, I don't care. I will do whatever you feel like I need to do to get a grip on this battle. And I mean, so afterwards, like it was a mixed emotions of like grateful, relief. I would say like humble confidence to be able to walk out and say like, I knew I was capable of, but I just did it, you know? But to your point, I'm not going to get on my high horse and say like, yeah, I'm good, you know, because I know I'm not. And I know that I need to stay ahead of this and I need to keep working. And, you know, I was in intense therapy for almost about like a good 4 to 5 years, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like, you know, my brain started going like, what does that look like? So I know like and the gym plays a huge part for me as well, right? But
Yep.
I have like a very similar feeling to like when I leave a meeting, right? Where it's like, there's definitely days, more often than not, that I don't want to go to the gym.
Sure.
I've never regretted going to the gym. Like, I walk out feeling much better than when I walked in.
No doubt.
Same thing with like, you know, going to a meeting where it's like, you know, I might not like, you know, enjoy every meeting that I go to, but it's like, I definitely feel better when I leave. So I didn't know if it was a very similar experience, right? Or if it was more of like, you and your therapist have also like this boundary set where it's like, yo, listen, you know, you got me on speed dial, God forbid anything, you know, were to crop up. Which I'm sure given early on, maybe it was like that.
Yeah. Yeah. He's incredible, man. Dr. Anton is his name. And he's, like, I consider him one of the closest people in my life because he knows, you know, he knows me to my core.
Yeah.
And I trusted him with everything that I had. And like, so a blessing in my life would be the understatement. You know what I mean? Like the work that he pulled me through and guided me through is just incredible.
So before you found Dr. Anton, right? How many therapists did you actually like? Was it just like the guy that drew the circle?
Nah, I was like probably like 3 or 4.
Right. So the point that I'm trying to make is like, just because somebody doesn't like work out, right? Like, go like it's out there for you.
No
right?
doubt. No doubt.
You know, whether you believe in God or a different religion or nothing or karma or love or whatever the case may be. Like, I don't believe that we were put on this earth to struggle 24/7. Right?
Absolutely not.
Although, right, like stuff happens. We start to like inherently grow with whatever our character defects may or may not be.
No doubt.
And like, there's absolutely a way out. Sometimes it just takes, like, I went through years and years of like trying to find like the correct medication that kind of like worked for me.
For sure.
And it wasn't until I found an addiction specialist that actually used to work at another local treatment center that you know, started their own private practice. And and she was like, Chris, why are we playing this game? You've been on multiple different medications. You say that you're not getting any better, although your life is kind of just like blah, like, you know, baseline, whatever. Why wouldn't we use science and do the DNA testing or whatever?
For sure.
And we did, and like it came back that like everything that I had tried up until that point would have never worked.
It's no good.
You know, and then we went a different route, and it literally saved my life. You know, so I say all that. I asked that question about like how many people did you have to go through? Because it gets to a point where it's like it was a decision for me. It's like I'm not going to continue to live like this. I'm gonna get better one way or another. Because the latter is like, I'm just going to be in pain. Right.
Yep.
And if that's the case, there's no way that I can live that way anyway.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So the purpose, which we probably need a whole nother hour on that one too. But, so you have done like a really, really cool job of like, whether you knew it or not, or whether it took like some, edging along, or whether you even know that you're living in your purpose, right? You are.
Yeah.
You've done a really cool job of turning a lot of the pain that you've went through into a everyday living in your purpose, right? Maybe not right now because it's the off season, but you still have the kids' minds, right? You're still teaching. So
yeah, we're 3 days a week, man. I like football 3 days a week right now.
You're still doing like almost like classroom work, or just like
strength
training?
All weight room stuff right now. Yep. So yeah, we're 12 months out of the year, man. It's there's no time off. So
it probably is a testament to how much you guys are actually doing in the off season, because there was a lot of games out there that you won. Yeah. You weren't even close to being the bigger team.
Yeah, we're not usually. We're usually not, man.
Some of those teams out there, so for the people that don't know, right, head coach of Central Bucks West.
Yep.
Not a small football school. The community definitely does a phenomenal job of being behind you guys, and it's very much Friday Night Lights when you guys are out there. It was a really cool thing because I came from, definitely a smaller archdiocese school in Center City, right? And although we took football serious, we all boys school, right? We didn't have a football field.
Yep.
We didn't have a complex like that. Remember when I first met you at the field, I was like, these kids know what they got.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. It's incredible.
So seeing all that was like really, really. It was a full circle moment for me, right? Because I don't live in Bucks, I live in Mako, but like being in like the Upper Marion Township, I've been to that school and I've seen like the facilities they have, and I'm like, these kids got turf fields. Like, we played on dirt.
Yep.
Right? We practice on rocks.
Yep.
We literally had to practice and like, sacrifice our bodies just to make it to game day.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So it's cool to see like, the facilities that are out there for these kids. But regardless of that, right? So you're still 3 days a week, right? Mm-hmm. 12 months out of the year. You also teach a lot of these kids.
I do.
What subject do you teach?
So I teach business.
Okay. So I could probably, pick your brain on that too.
I teach like personal finance courses. I teach like sports and entertainment marketing, which is cool. It's a fun course. And a couple like general business courses just to kind of get kids interested in business, So
at what point are we going to start talking about social media with the business courses?
I mean, we do.
Because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, we do.
All right.
Yeah, it's a huge part of what it's a huge part of our digital marketing section. So yeah, we're always kind of.
It's just so interesting that like I was definitely anti social media for a long time. Like I would post like my anniversary date or whatever, pictures of my kids and really stuff from my mom. But now it's like social media is not going anywhere.
Yep.
And it also directly ties into like personal branding if you wanted to.
Absolutely.
So how have you seen, right? We obviously won't drop any names if any of these parents are watching or not watching or whatever the case may be. But like, I'm sure you've had some difficult kids like throughout your linear of not only teaching, but coaching, right? Like kids that any given day, I'll keep it on myself, right? It could have been like I was born with all the talent in the world.
Sure.
I was the least amount of like, I didn't want to work for any of it.
Yeah.
So I knew that like my freshman year, I was starting varsity for, on the soccer team.
Yeah.
I was never going to go to the collegiate level. I was just the last to find out in the sense that like, I didn't want to work for it.
Yeah.
So like, how have you tied all of that purpose, all of that pain, all of like what your expertise is really into like keeping kids motivated?
Yeah. So I think the short term is this, like, I feel like I have gifts, and even within the midst of my pain, I feel like it's incumbent upon us, specifically as men, to be able to give your gifts back, in the form of serving. And like teaching and coaching, when you're doing it the right way, you are leading with a servant mindset. And, look, not everybody who teaches and not everybody who coaches, operates out of that disposition. But I feel like when you do that, when you're leading with that servant mindset, it creates a level of authenticity in the room. Mm-hmm. And so like we're absolutely huge on culture at West. Like, I mean, we talk about it every single day we're together. And, you know, one of the pillars that we discuss all the time is like the need and the willingness to be authentic in the room. Because the opposite of authentic is fake. Mm-hmm. And when you are operating out of a false disposition, nothing will ever work. Like, you will never grow. You will never sustain success. And so, like, you know, in terms of like shifting my pain into my purpose, it really is about me showing up authentically, not being afraid to talk about my experiences, to talk about my emotions. You know, I recently went through like a really difficult divorce, and, you know, I made the decision to be really transparent with our team about, you know, what I was experiencing and what I was going through, because I felt like they needed to see the authentic side of what that life looks like, you know, and, you know, what that does.
And also, not to cut you off, but doing it as a stand-up person, right? And like, not like, just because I know enough about you, that you weren't bad-mouthing any party that was involved, right? Like, you know, kind of doing it with like a sense of honor and dignity. You know, although you were going through like a really shitty time, like doing it with your head held high, and still handling your responsibilities.
No doubt. And
I wasn't even there for it, right? But regardless, I had to throw that little plug in there, because I'm sure that it's not easy.
Yeah, I think it's more about like, you know, young men. Like, this is just my belief, Chris, that like there is such a lack of healthy masculinity out there in the world right now. And whether it's toxic or whether it's not existing, like there's not a lot of healthy masculine energy out there. And, you know, I feel like from a purpose standpoint, the things that I've experienced in my life have allowed me to take a really humble, introspective look at who I want to be as a man. And, you know, so when I'm in a position where, you know, I have 75 to 80, you know, JV varsity football players, I got another 40 down on the freshman team. I mean, they're all eyes on me 12 months out of the year. So, like, you know, I'm a believer in the fact that, like, as men, we're given power to rule our kingdoms, our domains, whatever you want to call it, like, you know, your household, your workplace, and what you do with that power is ultimately what shapes our reality. And there's so many men out there that have power and they have authority, and they yield it in the worst ways. And so all of the, you know, the struggles and the pain that I've gone through from a personal standpoint, I really believe have put me in a position to be able to utilize that power for good. And part of that good is trying to really instill fundamental, foundational principles in young men, so that when they grow up, they're men of value, they're men of character, and they're men that handle their power well, you know? And so, like, that's the essence of what I do. Football is the vehicle that allows something like that to take place. But like, the essence is, the purpose is to take all the pain that I've gone through and what I've learned in those situations, and be able to not prevent that from happening for these guys, but to give them the skills to be able to work and navigate that healthy ways, you know? And like, that is purposeful work. And, you know, so it motivates me every day to show up with consistency, you know, and what that looks like.
Well, I definitely could tell that it wasn't an act, right? When I sat in the locker room one time and I was like, "Yo, can I mic you up?" Yeah. The cool part is that I've been on like not a lot, but definitely my fair share of like some high level teams. Right?
Sure.
I've also had the privilege of like being in locker rooms and like, you know, listening to like pregame speeches and stuff like that.
Yep.
The biggest takeaway that I had from like that moment, right, which again was a really cool moment, was well, I have to say all this first, right? Not only were you guys not the biggest team, right, or the most talented team out there, but you guys absolutely did the absolute best and exceeded with what you had.
Yep.
Although the end result was not where you wanted to be.
No.
You still went pretty damn far, right? What'd you go? Semis?
We were final 16 in the state, which was like district semifinals for us.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a good run. It's a good run.
So with all that being said, the fact that you're able to motivate the young men that you coach, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure there might have been one or two curse words here, right? But the truth of the matter is that everybody, I have to preface it with like, everybody has their own coaching style, right? I'm not saying that anybody's right, wrong, or indifferent.
For sure.
But the fact that you're able to do what you do, without like an F-bomb left and right, or without like, trying to like instill violence, and the list goes on, right?
Yep.
But like really like getting behind what you said with like the culture and like going out there as like your brothers,
no doubt.
Goes a really, and I'm nobody, but it goes a really long way for me because it was like this guy that I don't know from a can of paint has built out something so special, right? And then also watching the kids, and the level of respect, not that they only had for you, but like their surroundings,
for sure.
Again, there's no right, wrong, or indifferent way that I see it, but like it's just not the upbringing that I had, right?
No doubt.
And maybe that's like an inner city thing. I don't know, but it was really, really cool to see, and I think I had mentioned it to Amanda multiple times where I'm like, I can't get over how like nice these kids are. But also so competitive in the same.
Yes.
So that was like a really, really cool thing for me to experience. Because like I only knew like go out there and kill them.
Yeah, sure.
When really it was like you approached it from a completely different angle where it was, like we're doing this as a family, right? No, and 9 times out of 10, you guys went out there and handled business.
For sure, man. For sure.
Which, who knows what the narrative is on the other sideline, right? Who knows like how that team's being brought up and like kind of being hyped up. And again, no right, wrong, or indifferent way to go about it. But it was really cool to see, how you went about it. And I was like, holy shit, dude, like this guy, there's no way this is an act, because like, even if it was scripted, I'm like, there's no way he would have fumbled. He would have fumbled over some words.
Yeah.
So that was like a really cool thing, man.
I do. I appreciate that.
So what's the future look like, right? Because you've been with CB for a while.
For sure.
Right? Are we going to the NFL, or what are we doing here?
Hey, look,
because I'm sure you're making an absolute killing right now.
Yeah, man, raking it in, man, raking it in.
But that's not why you do it, right?
Nah, man, it's I live a purpose-driven life that I surrendered a long time ago, and so a lot of people ask me that, like, do you have aspirations to coach here? Do you have aspirations to coach here?
Because you could, right? No matter if you have self-doubt or not, like you definitely could.
Yeah, I believe, confidently that, I feel like I can coach at a really high level. But like for me, my life it's not about serving me. And, there was a point in my life where like, I had aspirations to want to coach in the NFL, but all of those aspirations were ego driven, and none of it was coming from an authentic place. And, once I kind of stepped out of that situation and kind of shedded that false self and, realized and recognized that my life is bigger than me. And yes, I have some gifts that I feel like I've been blessed with, but my life is bigger than me. And if I'm meant to use those gifts to go coach in the NFL and make, $10 million a year, whatever it is, then that situation will arise. And if it's the right situation, and I believe in my heart it's the right situation, then I'll move in that direction. But right now, like, I want to continue to help people, and I want to continue to authentically, like, truly be able to connect with people and, allow them to be better versions of themselves. And, so if that is at high school for the rest of my life, then I'm perfectly okay with that. If I feel like God pulls me in a different direction and says like, hey, I'm going to open this door for you and you're going to walk through it, then I'll walk through it. So, I
know if it was up to Charles, he'd want you at Penn State.
Yep.
But the cool thing is that maybe you see it now, maybe you don't, but I think back on my high school career. And I always have like the utmost respect for like my head coach or the soccer team. And, his name's Coach Ray, and he actually came from Wood, but essentially when he came over, he brought like a very different view towards like, he was at Wood, now he's at Roman Catholic. Yeah. But like I have such a level of respect, and I say all that to say like years from now, right? Like you're gonna see. I'm very big on like the ripple effect.
Yeah.
And I think you're gonna start to see like more and more of these stories of like, hey man, if it wasn't for you, like literally telling me exactly what I didn't want to hear, right? Like you hear about these stories all the time. I have them, you have them. There's people that come into your life, whether you know that you're that person for the other person or not in the moment, right? Where you can literally shape the course of somebody's next year, next 2 years, next decision, how they react when they get, a cheap shot on the field, right? One dumb act on the field can ruin somebody's career, right? Absolutely. And if somebody's like operating on a different plane, much like to your pregame speech, who knows, right? Yeah. How many times do like, I grew up with them. I was one of them where I think like the scout wants to see the hot shot that's going to make the big play. Yeah. When really the scout probably they're already there for a reason, right? They want to see how you're reacting in situations that you don't want to be in.
Absolutely, man. And they want to see a 360, you know, they want to see the full picture.
They want to see you take like that cheap shot and like walk off the field, right? They want to see you, help the guy up that literally just like put his finger in your eye, right? They want to see you not talk shit. They want to see all that stuff.
No doubt.
Which is really cool. And again, coming full circle for me, like that directly ties into that pregame speech, everything that you really stand by. So I'm happy you came on the show. I know that there's like a bunch of stuff that we didn't even talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, essentially we could talk forever, but we're already at that time.
Yeah.
You're into the crypto.
I'm a crypto nerd, man. Yeah.
What should I be?
Look, I don't give out financial advice.
It's called gatekeeping.
Yeah.
We know what you're doing.
I'm a believer in XRP.
Okay.
The utility of XRP is meant to solve like $1 trillion liquidity crisis in the banking systems. And everything that's happening behind the scenes right now, every arrow points of like mass adoption. And when you really start to look at what it does and what it solves, it can't be cheap because, like for instance, business is happening globally and one country's trying to send another one, let's just say like, a couple $100 million. If you're facilitating that exchange with XRP, and you're sending a couple $1 million or, a couple $100 million, whatever it is, and XRP's right now trading at like, I think like 2 and change, then you would need to multiply the 2 and change by the 100 million to be able to move that. So if it's meant to solve a, multi-trillion-dollar liquidity crisis, then it can't be cheap. So, and there's a lot of, institutional adoption that's happening behind the scenes. And I really do believe that like once they flip the switch and they shift this new financial system, I think the value will catch up.
Who's they?
We're getting into it. The 1%. That controls all the money in the world, right? The 1% holds 99 and then the 99%, holds 1. So, now there is the financial system's so outdated. Like we use, the banking system uses a system called SWIFT that goes like all the way back to like the 1940s, 50s, and they're still using it today. I think it's like every 130 years, there's a massive financial shift that happens when you look back at history, and we're like right at that point. And, all the signs are out there that, all the signals say that like the adoption's happening. It's just a matter of like,
we're seeing it unfold literally every single day.
Right in front of our eyes. And, like when you start, when you start looking at like the internet and when that came out and, stock market went nuts and there was the dot-com bubble in 99 and, 98% of the companies ended up fizzling out and becoming nothing, but some of them did make it but then there were so many others that spawned, and you're going to see that happen in crypto. Like once it gets adopted and the use case becomes real, you're going to see so many of these meme coins and all that stuff. All that stuff's going to get just trashed and pushed to the side. But the ones that have utility, that actually solve real world problems, those are the ones that I think are going to,
I mean, I'm already seeing it, and I was like, hold on, I can buy a car on Amazon.
Yeah.
So they're already like really, kind of like transforming the whole idea of the internet.
They are.
My biggest argument, right? Not to be sitting down with a teacher, right? But like, what is school at this point, right? Like, not to go down this real.
Well, I mean, look, I believe the new administration is talking about shutting down the Department of Education. So, like, they're going to kick everything back to the states. And, we had mentioned, like earlier, we were talking about, like, young kids working out, and like there's an awakening happening, and there's an awakening happening spiritually. There's an awakening happening physically, emotionally. And I think people are starting to wake up to the truth, and they're starting to recognize that, like, maybe it really is difficult for a 15-year-old young kid to sit in a desk for 7-8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like, maybe they need more sunlight.
Especially,
you know what I mean?
Especially,
like,
right? Not to tie it all together.
Yeah.
If they struggled like I did, right? With like bad ADD and substance abuse, or right, the ladder of like OCD.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, no, we call that a demerit.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm sorry. But they don't know they're suffering from mental health, right? It could be anything.
Yeah. So I don't know what the future of it looks like, but I do think it's impossible to ignore, in my opinion, some of the awakening that's happening with people in a good way, not in a bad way, in a good way. I think people are starting to wake up to the truth, and, caring a lot more about, their bodies, their emotional health, their relationships, all that, so I think it's,
even the more information you talked about, like, teaching personal finance, even people can say whatever they want about TikTok, right? But like, I get a lot of information from social media.
Sure.
And like the fact that,
well, that's your new news.
Yeah. Well, so that and Twitter, right? If I want like anything real time, I go to Twitter.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is the new news, like that. The legacy media stations, like they lost
a lot of credibility.
Yes.
On and not even that we're like one sided here, but like on both sides.
Yeah, on both sides. It's just, I was thinking about this the other day, like, social media has created an opportunity, even though more information is out there, it has created an opportunity for more truth to be spoken. Whereas, like, you rewind like 100 years ago, you had one news station.
And it was fact.
You know what I mean?
Where were you going to cross-reference?
Yeah.
It was fact.
Right? So, like, the expansion of all this information and the availability of it instantaneously has created an opportunity for people to question things and to question the truth. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No. As long as, I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
No, questioning the truth is not a bad thing, right?
No.
Some sort of,
defiantly to, just to raise, some level of disruption, then it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But like, if you're seeking the truth and you're questioning things from a healthy perspective because you want the truth, then I think that's a great thing.
It's so I see it from so many different angles, right? So like, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Right? But as soon as we got to this point,
then
we got like heavy AI, and then now like AI looks, sounds, and like puts out like stuff that looks exactly real. And we're like, oh my God, look at this. And it's
I'm gonna change my chair and let Amanda come and talk about the AI factor because she's so educated on like how, like, the role of what AI is going to do to our health and our society, but also how we can, in a really, really healthy and mindful way, not allow that to become a detriment, just like anything else, right? Like, human beings take amazing things and we do horrible things with them. So literally, like, AI is incredible.
I use AI in
it's incredible
everything I do.
Right. So, but
and I'm just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
I really don't even know what I'm doing yet.
yeah,
And it's pretty wild how
It is,
it's
man.
like simplified my life in many different ways.
yeah. I think the scary thing is this, like this is the simplest way it makes sense to me, is like, you can't allow AI to replace your brain. And so if you are eliminating critical thinking and constantly resorting to AI to do that work for you, then you're literally not working your brain. And that's where it becomes scary.
So back to my original question, right? Like, what is school?
Yeah.
Because, especially for my 7-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
Right now, I know that if I say, hey, Siri, right, I could ask it anything.
Sure.
And it's going to give me exactly the answer. Even the most difficult math question that I was taught for 2 semesters on how to solve. At what point do we really take a different look at, like, let's build people instead of,
that statement alone right there is wildly profound, because, like, when you say let's build people, that opens up. So, I certainly don't know the answers. I'm going to continue to build people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's my role.
Right.
That's, and that's my purpose.
Well, I think that's like the whole aspect of the question, right? Is like, let's build people, not in the sense of like AI people, right? But like, let's build character. Let's build morals and values.
Emotionally healthy.
Right.
Self-aware, truth-seeking people, like that's, I think, that's what we need in society, so.
All right, well, we'll reconvene for the next one when we just go on,
Sounds
on
good,
that
man.
whole thing, dude. I really do appreciate you coming out, and actually like reminding me, like, yo, it's the off season, let's do it, because I know that like our relationship really started way before New Lens Media, of like, hey, let's get Rob on the podcast, and I was like, okay, and to this day I still don't know what I'm doing, but I was like, I don't know.
We're all just trying to figure it out.
Went by the wayside, but I'm really happy that we eventually got you on.
Yeah, no doubt.
We got to ask, because you're in the football scene.
Sure.
Like, what is now when this airs?
Yeah.
Careful now. When this airs, it'll be Wednesday.
Yeah.
But Sunday we got a big day.
Sure.
What's the outcome?
Look, I think
unbiased too.
Unbiased. I think
obviously you're a Birds fan.
Yeah. I'm definitely a Birds fan. Grew up a Birds fan, but unbiased, I think it's one of the better matchups that the NFL has seen in quite a while. Maybe since I thought the last matchup they played was great, but so evenly matched when you got like, Mahomes, who you could argue maybe him, Brady, toss him up, right? I heard a stat the other day, like the Chiefs were in 7 AFC championships in a row. Like that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have such unbelievable talent on both sides, and in a lot of ways it crosses each other, each other out with, you got Barkley, and then you got Mahomes, and you got, a great, defense on the Eagles, and then the Chiefs got Spagnuolo, who, draws up some crazy effective schemes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then you got Andy that we hated at one time, but he's
doing an incredible job. He just, you give him a bye week, his stats are ridiculous. So, look, I do think the Eagles are the more complete team, like from top to bottom. I think they're playing a little bit more unified than the Chiefs are. And that's not taking anything away from them, because they're incredible. I do think the Eagles are going to find a way to win the game. But I think it's going to be a tremendous game. And, it always comes down to, at any level, turnovers. And if you go back to the previous game, when they played 2 years ago, the turning point in that game was not when Bradley or Bradbury got beat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was when Jalen Hurts fumbled,
mm-hmm.
and it was a scoop and score for a touchdown. Like, that was the game. And so whoever turns the ball over less will win the game.
I mean, that's what we say in soccer, right?
Yep.
They can't beat us if they don't score,
Yep.
right? But I'm going to say it, right?
Yeah.
They got Taylor Swift. And like, if we want to talk about conspiracies, right?
Yeah,
and like how much money they're bringing in.
I hope you don't have any Taylor Swift fans who
so
watch.
If it happens, you heard it here first. But my thing, as
Yeah.
much as I love the Birds and I want another Super Bowl and I want to party down on Broad Street.
Sure.
I foresee, them winning.
Yeah.
Right? If we're blowing them out, we're winning the game. No problem.
Yeah.
But I foresee, a buzzer beater, if you will.
Okay.
Right. And Zach Ertz gets on a knee afterwards and he proposes to Taylor Swift.
Kelsey, Travis.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And if it happens, right? I might never watch the NFL again because then I'll know that it's.
Yeah. If that happens, I'll, any food that I ate that night will most likely probably get regurgitated.
You're like, oh, here we go. Now we know exactly what it was.
That whole aspect of things is just like it. I'm a football purist. So like when I sit down and watch a game, man, I'm watching the game.
I probably couldn't watch the game with you because you're probably out here like calling out schemes.
Yeah.
Like,
so
I don't know.
Like that whole aspect of things, it just makes me like, I just can't deal with it, cause like we're taught as coaches, like you block out every distraction for your players possible. Like you create this cocoon around these guys. And then I look at that and I'm like, gosh, that's the ultimate distraction, So I'm looking at it through coach's eyes. So,
I mean, it'll definitely be interesting to see.
But I got the Eagles though, man. In a close one.
I mean, as we should, right?
In a close one. Yep.
Well, again, I thank you again. Is there anything you want to say before we shut it down?
Yeah, man, I just appreciate you, giving me the opportunity to, come on and just share a little bit of my story. And the truth is, man, and I mean this sincerely, I just want to help people. And if my story in any way can help somebody, whether that's them on their own, whether that's them reaching out to me, in any capacity, I don't want to see people suffer in silence, man. I want to see people be able to take action and take steps towards becoming, the fullest, healest or healthiest version of themselves. And, so I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, man.
Yep.
So with that, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.
All right.